All right. I've been wanting to make a video about this for forever, but I just want to cover how to learn things at a very fundamental level for I'm doing this from the perspective of academics, but if you want to use this for anything else, I'm sure it will work and translate pretty well. My motivation for it is that it seems to me that when people go through school, they acquire a certain method of learning that has not been reflected on very much, if at all. And so there's just simply better ways to learn than whatever you stumble upon in your years of schooling. So I'm going to start from the basics of what learning is. One of the steps when you learn things is to take information from short-term memory and put it in your long-term memory. This is called encoding. There are multiple types of this. The main one we're going to talk about is semantic encoding. It's been shown to be one of the most effective, if not the most effective. And this is understanding and learning what a word means or what a concept is. The other forms of encoding are much more surface level. So like if you repeat something many, many times, it will encode in a way that is just from the repetition. I forget the specifics of the other ones, but semantic encoding is really the main one that we will talk about. So with that in mind, what can we do? We can create the optimal conditions for semantic encoding to occur. And this will vastly increase the efficiency of learning something. Both it will stick in your head better for a longer amount of time. You'll also just understand it better and be able to apply it to situations, apply the information that you're learning to situations that aren't necessarily a question on a test, but rather like something that you're actually using and actually care about. So there are a few parts of creating these optimal conditions. The first is just like internal and external environment of, we can say when you're studying, this isn't exclusive to going to the library to study, but just in general, like even in a classroom or whatever, we have to create optimal conditions of our internal and external environment. I am going to link a video of basically where I learned what that means, what that looks like. It is from Dr. K at Healthy Gamer. He covers it from a very specific point of view for people who have struggled with like video game addiction and have just been like having a hard time getting going in life. I think the information that he provides it goes far beyond just that demographic. It is extremely, extremely valuable. So the second point here, so yeah, check the description for the link of that to that. The second point here is what I will mostly cover today, which is using Obsidian to sort of manually and externally semantic encode. What I mean by this is that we are going to be physically typing out, physically creating the links between things that are sort of like theoretically happening in your brain during semantic encoding. I don't know that this is 100% an accurate, 100% accurate way to describe it, but I think it is close enough, and it's sort of what I experience it as, and I think what might be going on. I don't know. The third point here is the last like optimizing thing that you can do is to just use what you learn in some way. So have it come to your mind in a way that isn't just as it relates to a question on a test. You need this information to be something that you are really and truly understanding at a deeper level. And so that could be applying the concepts that you're learning to other ones that are only like somewhat related to something else, and seeing how those apply to each other. It could also just be learning random extra bits of information about the concepts that aren't even necessarily things you need to know, but simply extending upon what you're learning beyond what you need to know is going to make it more likely for this information to stick into your mind. Basically, these two are just, so your brain is constantly filtering out information based on how useful it is to you. If there's background noise, if there's like birds chirping on the trees, you probably are tuning them out most of the time because it's just not useful information to you. Your brain is doing this constantly. So what we're going to try to do is make it as least likely as we can for your brain to filter out the information that you're trying to learn. Because despite you probably knowing that you need to learn this, sometimes your brain just doesn't care and will not find it as useful, and therefore filter it out. So I'm really just going to be showing you the second point here, but keep this in mind. Also, these 1 and 3 kind of, you'll see this brought up some if you check out the video I'm going to link here. So let's get to Obsidian. So Obsidian is what I use to take notes and sort of map out everything that I'm learning constantly for school, and also just for random things I'm interested in. So let me move over to that. So this is Obsidian. This is the graph view of Obsidian. So each one of these little dots here is a note. The bigger ones will have more links between it and another concept. Sorry, I should clarify. So when I say it's a note, it is the note of a single concept. So if we zoom in here, we can go to like motor neuron, sure. We have the name of what the concept is, and we have any other names it might go by, which is super helpful because sometimes different fields, different classes will reference things in different ways, despite it being the exact same concept. So it's super, super helpful to be able to link those together. And then you'll notice here, when I say a note, you might think of a few pages on whatever is covered in the period of like a single class. That is not what notes are in this. So like I said, they're limited to a single concept, and it only contains the things that you either know or need to know or are trying to learn about that one concept. So here you can see that there's these blue pieces of text. These are all links to other files, and so whenever I hover over them, they show up with that note. You can also see if I hover over the node here on the graph, it will show you where it's linked to. I have a ton of notes on neuroscience and psychology and cognitive science stuff. That's what this big glob is here. So they are a bit more all over the place and highly, highly interlinked between each other. So it's a bit harder to see. But if I go over to chemistry stuff here, it might be a little bit easier to see what things are linked to. So this is like on Lewis diagrams, and you can see what is relevant to that. So like what things about chemistry I need to sort of understand in order to also understand Lewis diagrams, or what things need Lewis diagrams to be understood. That is sort of what the links mean. And you can kind of see that there is a natural structure that emerges, which I think is awesome, because all that I do when I'm taking notes is write. I just write on a single concept. And then if there's a new concept, I will just create a new note. So if there was, let's go test note. So when I'm creating a new note, I'm just pressing Command O. And this is find or create note. And I'll do test note. I press Command Shift and Enter, and that will pull it up over here. I also have the sliding panes plugin, which is why the user interface looks like this. You can Google that, like sliding panes Obsidian, and figure it out. I think it also is in Obsidian by default. So you might not even have to do that. I'm not sure. You might just have to enable it. But here's your test note. So if I wanted to say this is related to unipolar neurons, I didn't link it, so it's not going to do anything. But if I then go double bracket unipolar neuron, and there, now it's linked, and now it'll show up under linked mentions. And that is really the basis of all of my note taking. That's what it looks like. It's not extremely complicated. If I wanted to add more information here, I would just like type in more information about this concept. I think I even have notes about what a concept is. So let me link this. You can also highlight it and then click bracket, and I'll link it like that. Really unrelated, but concepts are almost the same thing as predictions. Something to think about. So yeah, that is a surprising amount of what it looks like to take notes. You'll just be sitting there in class. Whenever a concept comes up, or even better, before class, like reading the textbook, going through, whenever a concept comes up, like a vocab word that you need to know, you can create a note for it, or find a note for it, and start writing about it. And as you go through, make sure you're linking the concepts together, not only to keep it organized within your notes, but also because that will help you understand what this is, what the concept that you're learning is. Because as soon as you link it, you're probably going to be like, oh yeah, this thing. And then you can like read about it, have a little refresh moment, and be on your way to adding more information. There are tons and tons and tons of plugins for Obsidian for a whole bunch of random things. Let me look at my notes here. So there's a few things that you'll notice when you start using Obsidian that'll feel a little bit weird. When you first start out, you're not going to have other notes, so you'll probably be creating a lot of notes. So linking things together, what you can do is, if I go back to my test note, I want to link this thing, but I have no notes for it. So you can link, and then it'll show up as this kind of grayed out or less vibrant link, this means it's not created yet. And so you can just like create this whenever you're ready, or whenever it is created, it will automatically link to the thing with this title. So you can always have it ready to be linked. That's super handy. But yeah, when you're starting out, you'll probably just have like a small little cluster that'll look something like this, with just a few nodes. And as you keep going, you'll build up more and more and more and more and more notes on things. And what's amazing, and sort of the reason why you do this, is every single node is from wherever you learned it, but it sticks around when you're learning something completely unrelated or seemingly unrelated. So when I was learning about ions in chemistry, I'm using this exact same note. It looks like I didn't take too many notes on it, but I'm using the exact same note in a lot of my neuroscience stuff. And so this information carries on with you throughout your academic career. I really wish I would have started doing this sooner. It's so nice to always have your notes there, especially since you're the one typing them. I think when you look back and read things, I think it probably accesses some form of memory of typing it, and helps you remember it, which is awesome. Much better than going back and looking at your old textbook, for sure. Let's see. So another thing that might feel weird, you're only going to be creating notes with tiny bits of information. Like I said, like, what was I on? Ions? This is all of my notes on ions. That's it. Everything. Anything else? Ions has a lot of links. So I'm using the concept of ions a lot, but the amount of information I actually know about what an ion is isn't a ton, because ions aren't extremely difficult to explain once you understand what electrons and atoms are. And there's just a couple types. So that's about it. And it might feel weird and like you're not doing a good enough job if you're only putting a tiny bit of information on each note. But that is normal and honestly good, because that means that you are able to digest these smaller pieces, like one piece at a time. And I think it helps you comprehend what you're learning in a much better way. The quantity of notes, so that said, despite there only being a tiny bit of information on each note, the quantity of notes that you're going to be creating is going to be way more than the one note per class period that you're probably used to. This is because each class was going to cover multiple notes. So throughout the class, you'll be creating like a lot of notes, and it's going to feel weird at first. And that's normal. And it just means that you're doing it right. Also, I think I put this down here as well, but give yourself time to learn the formatting. Obsidian uses something called Markdown, which is sort of a pretty popular formatting for like text documents. If you're going into like research, you'll probably have to use it at some point. But you can reference the Obsidian documentation. Let me find it. Sure. Obsidian. And you can go formatting. This is advanced formatting syntax. It's basic stuff. So read through this, and you can always search as well, which is super handy. You can make your notes look super pretty if you want. There's ways to do callouts, which look cool. That's like what this little thing is, the little note. box. It looks pretty with a little icon. You can make notes look so much nicer than the way I have it. I do it very bare bones because I'm taking it during class and I don't really want to mess about with formatting too much. I just want to have a couple titles and subtitles, and that's like it. You can also, what I do use quite a bit is LaTeX, I think is how you pronounce it. It's typed out like latex, but I think you pronounce it LaTeX. I don't know why. I'm trying to think of a good place where that would be. It'd probably be in like enthalpy. Yeah, so this is a great example. This is supported by default. So if you type $, or if you just put anything between $2, like any math equation, you can do 7 plus 12, and then you like get out of the $signs. Then you have a little equation here. And so this one, of course, you could just type out normally, but for things that are a bit more complicated, like you can do fractions, and you'll learn the formatting as you go. Again, there's more LaTeX documentation that you can just Google, like Google how to do a fraction in LaTeX or whatever. So if this is like 2/3, that's not how you do it. Hold on. Sorry. It is this. Oops. This. Yeah. So you can make equations and a whole bunch of symbols in that, like delta or whatever you need. I'm trying to think if there's any that would be a bit more complicated and show this better. I don't know it off the top of my head, but yeah, go look up LaTeX, and if that's something you're going to use, it's definitely worth knowing. Again, if you're going into like research or whatever, a lot of papers are written in LaTeX, so you'll definitely be building that skill as well. I was happy to hear that not only was I learning this for my notes, but it's also going to translate in my future academic career as well, which is awesome. So yeah, formatting is something that you will learn as you go, but probably get acclimated to it before you start a class. It can be a lot at first, but once you're used to it, it'll just be second nature. And yeah, like I said, it's a little bit slower, but it results in a much higher quality of notes because they're organized by their meaning, and they are reinforcing that semantic encoding, meaning you'll have to go back to them less. So despite you putting in tons of time, you won't spend a lot of time running back through them unless you're doing maybe a little study session before a test or something. It hopefully should stick in your head if you're doing it right. And deciding when to break something off into a new note rather than adding to one it's a skill for sure that you'll develop. And I think that skill is helpful just for learning in general, to understand when you're learning about one concept ends and another begins. I think it will really make the definition of things much more clear and make you understand them more precisely. So a few things that I've noticed that are tricky since starting is in non-STEM, like history-based classes, like I'm thinking like politics. That's the main one that comes to mind, or just like a history class. I haven't found a good system for doing that, but that's mostly because I haven't spent time trying to make a good system for it. There are plugins that let you make timelines and stuff in Obsidian, and I imagine those would be very, very helpful. Also, just what a concept is in those classes is a little bit different. I don't think they are as standalone as they are in STEM. So like a war, the meaning, like the concept of a particular war and its meaning is just very different from what the meaning of a concept is in a STEM field. It's totally doable, I have no doubt. It's just not something that I'm familiar with, so I found it tricky in my one politics class I took. I mentioned this already, deciding where a piece of info should live can be a little bit tricky. What I mean by that is that if there's an interaction between two things, which note should that belong in? So like, it's really up to you where you think that is more applicable. You can also just make its own note if you want, but that is something that I think you'll get a feel for over time as you make more and more notes, understand more and more concepts, and as you go back to your notes every once in a while, you'll understand like, oh, I expected this to be in this note, so maybe it should have been there to begin with, and you'll sort of learn as you go like that. The other thing that's tough is that there are some like tech-free classrooms, and those are not my favorite. There's really not much you can do about that. I recommend, though, I've had a couple, and I recommend that you read and take notes from the textbook thoroughly, and you should be doing this anyways. If you do end up watching the video that I recommended up here for mostly this first creating optimal conditions thing, as well as some of the third, if you see that, he will talk about how reading through the textbook first before going to class and then treating your class times as sort of review sessions is extremely, extremely good. So I do that quite a bit, but it still is a bit annoying to have tech-free classrooms where you can't like edit your notes while you're in there, or reference them. You'll be fine, but it is a bit unfortunate. I think that is it for what I wanted to cover. Really, this is sort of made as an extension to another video that I've watched before, covering like the philosophy of taking notes basically in the same way that I do, using Obsidian, but he didn't really go into detail of how he uses Obsidian, so I wanted to do a little bit more of that. Maybe at some point I'll cover some very minute things, like the way I like to format my notes and like recurring patterns throughout my notes. If people are interested in that, I might do it. Let me know. I could also cover like plugins that I'm using, what works for me. Of course, it's going to be a little bit different for everyone else. But yeah, if that's something you're interested in, let me know and I can do that. I hope this was helpful. That's about it.